There's a device that I've been using called a Whoop.
Hello and welcome back to IGOW3. Field reporter Danny here in the IGOW training ground to introduce weekly challenge number 29, the BetaFPV Happmodel So You Think You're Ready to Be an IGOW Champion? For this week's challenge, you're going to need to go back and watch some previous challenges, one from IGOW2 finals and one from the original IGOW finals. These are some of the hardest challenges ever created in IGOW history. One from IGOW2 season champion Daylight FPV and one from IGOW season 1 champion SteveK. This is going to be the last week of the IGOW Squid Games and the last week of IGOW3 before the finals. So if you make it through this week, you're going to be an IGOW3 finalist. Alright, now let's go back to Dan and Liz in IGOW Studios so they can break down this week's challenge.
Thanks, field reporter Danny. This week we'll combine two of the most difficult challenges ever created in the history of IGOW and smash them together into one awesome combo. Much like you would get if you combined this week's two featured sponsors, BetaFPV and Happmodel. Both of these companies have been at the forefront of the brushless whoop revolution and have helped push the industry forward by constantly innovating and releasing new products.
That's right. When I started flying back in mid-2017, there weren't even brushless whoop-specific parts available. Everything was brushed for whoops back then. But by the end of 2017 and into 2018, there started to be more and more parts available, and I started trying to build a 1S 65mm brushless whoop. After a couple months, I had a formula for my Skittle whoop, which could do everything I wanted at the time. But by today's standard, it was really weak and it flew horribly. But I really liked it. I think my biggest contribution to today's whoop meta is that back in October of 2018, I was the first person to put 0802 brushless motors on a 1S 65mm whoop, and that has become the most popular and common build formula for brushless whoops today. During this time period, we had 3 local FPV clubs running whoop races, and we also ran a 2S class for baby hawks. Nate Payne, aka Mr. Shutterbug, was focused on building a 2S brushless whoop so that he could race in the baby hawk class. After a few failed attempts and fires, he had created his power whoop build, which became super popular in the online FPV whoop community. After Nate and I made some contacts at BetaFPV, we and 2 of our other local buddies, Brendan and Merlin, all started working with them to create the Beta75X, which was the first large-scale production bind and fly brushless whoop. That was released in August of 2018.
I wasn't really interested in FPV at the time, but I remember that you guys were always getting together to test out parts and fly your newest builds. Then, when the final Beta75X design was ready, I made the Team Props Out t-shirts that each of you wore in the Argony Reimagined video to promote the product's release. A few months after the 75X came out, Happmodel released the Mobula 7, which was the first brushless whoop that had the flight controller, ESCs, and the receiver all on a single board, which began the standard of an AIO or all-in-one board for whoops. It could also fly on both 1S and 2x1S, which made it very versatile, able to be easily flown both indoors and outdoors for everyone from beginners to experienced pilots. My first brushless whoop was a Mobula 7, and it made me start to really enjoy flying FPV more and got me into 2S and wanted to fly larger quads like 5-inch racers that I have now.
The Beta75X and the Happmodel Mobula 7 created huge interest and demand for brushless whoops and developed a new niche in the FPV hobby. Soon, many more companies would start to produce brushless whoop parts and bind and flies. Since 2008, BetaFPV and Happmodel have continued to lead the way in brushless whoops and micro technology. Both companies were among the first to release HD brushless whoops, and both have also expanded into toothpicks and other larger quadcopters. BetaFPV created the BT 2.0 connector that is an improvement over the standard PH 2.0, and Happmodel just recently released the first bind and fly whoop with HD0 digital FPV on board. And both companies are also now leading the way into the future with their ELRS products that seem to be finally replacing FR Sky as the new standard link protocol for whoops. I'm so grateful that BetaFPV and Happmodel have helped the community take brushless whoops to levels I never imagined possible just a few years ago. Both BetaFPV and Happmodel have been sponsors since Season 1 of IGOW. A huge thank you to BetaFPV and Thea Xiao, as well as Jason Shu and Happmodel for supporting IGOW for these last few years.
Okay, now let's jump into the requirements for weekly challenge number 29, the BetaFPV Happmodel So You Think You're Ready to Be an IGOW Champion? Requirement number 0 is that your video must be one continuous clip, all from one battery.
Requirement number 1 is that you must attempt to complete as many elements as possible from Daylight FPV's IGOW2 Week number 38 challenge. Link in the description below.
Requirement number 2 is that after the self-landing at the end of Daylight's trick, you then must attempt to complete as many elements as possible from SteveK's IGOW1 Week number 40 challenge. Link in the description box below.
Requirement number 3 is that you must attempt to follow all the requirements from the original challenges. Be sure to watch the videos and read their descriptions to make sure you do not miss anything, but there will also be clips at the end of this video. You get 1 attempt at each element listed in the video description below. You will get 1 point for each element you complete, except for some elements will be broken into multiple potential points, like 1 point for a power loop and 1 point if you also have constant loop motion. If you bump anything, tap the ground, or crash, you will not receive a point for that element, and then you must move on to the next element in the sequence. If you do not want to attempt an element, just yaw back and forth indicating a no attempt for an element and then move on to the next. You must list which elements you believe you completed and your final score either on screen or in your video description. Daylight's trick has 31 possible points and SteveK's trick has 18 possible points.
This week, there's also a $20 bonus challenge from FPV Exchange. If you can complete Daylight's challenge in less than 60 seconds, and then complete SteveK's challenge so that your video is no more than 85 seconds in total, then you will automatically pass this week and make it into the finals regardless of the way that the rest of the players perform. You will also win the power to choose which week your first round of challenge is, while everyone else's week will be randomly chosen.
For this last IGOW Squid Games week, we will have 10, 11, or 12 teams depending on how many of the pilots make it through week number 28. This week you will be playing versus your partner, and whoever has the higher score will be safe. Then, out of all the losing partners, the 2 pilots with the highest scores of that group will also be spared. As field reporter Dan said before, this will be the last week of IGOW3 before the finals. That means if you pass this challenge, you're going to make it to the finals. If we have more than 16 players that pass this week, then I will add additional prizes to the finals options so that there is something for everyone that becomes a finalist. So just do your best to put together a run that scores as many points as possible and hope it's more than your partner. Alright pilots, good luck and happy whooping!